Hi guys, and welcome to episode 176 of the James Layton Fitness Podcast. Now within this specific episode we'll be discussing what I've learned from 10 years of training. It's interesting, basically I did a post on Instagram and on Facebook, and basically it was a before and after photo, a recent photo, and then I've got the exact photo that's still basically my Ballantyne's membership photo, and that was taken when I first joined the gym at Ballantyne's in Norwich in 2008. So if you haven't yet seen that, if you head over to my Instagram or Facebook, it's certainly worth taking a look just for a laugh, just to see how scrawny I used to be. And I used the comment, I look like a baby llama, within the post. So if you head over to Facebook or Instagram, you'll be able to see that. So within this podcast, I really wanted to dive deep into the real key big lessons I've learned within my 10 years of training. I've made a huge amount of mistakes in the past, more mistakes than you could ever imagine. Let me try to run off a few examples. One of the mistakes I used to make was I used to run to and from the gym because someone told me if you start taking protein powder, you'll start gaining loads of body fat. So I thought, okay, the best way to counter this would be to run to and from the gym. And it's probably about 3 to 5 miles each way. So certainly not the most sensible move to make. I used to train 2 hours in the gym. I used to literally train every single body part for 2 hours. I've pretty much done every single diet: intermittent fasting, high carb, low carb, high protein, any diet you can imagine I've pretty much tried. And to be fair, when I first started training, it was the most important thing in my life. Fortunately, it's not the most important thing in my life now, but it was, and therefore I was just consumed by it. And as a result, I was constantly searching for the magic supplement, the magic diet plan, the magic training routine. And probably this kind of segues in nicely to the first big lesson. The first big lesson that I want to share with you: consistency trumps everything, and I mean everything. When I look back at what I've achieved in the last 10 years, I'll be honest with you, if I was training slightly suboptimally, if I had a slightly suboptimal nutrition approach, if I was using kind of slightly suboptimal supplements, I'm telling you right now, I'd probably look almost exactly to how I look now. And that's because consistency trumps everything. So essentially, if you're following a slightly suboptimal plan, if you're consistent with that, you're gonna outperform the most optimal plan in the world if you can't perform the most optimal plan in the world consistently. So therefore, consistency trumps everything. Slightly suboptimal approach, if you're consistent with over the long term, if you're more consistent than the most optimal plan in the world, you're going to get better results. And the reason why I want to share that with you, I think a lot of you are looking for this magic solution, like I was when I first started training. The magic meal plan, the magic training routine, the magic supplements. But ultimately, all I want you to do is implement what the information you have now. If you're consistent with that, more than likely you're going to outperform something that's slightly more optimal if you're not consistent with that more optimal approach. And that's really what I want you to focus on, is just take action on the information you have available now, because you can always adjust your course down the road. But I'm telling you right now, I mean, I'm a good example. At 10 years in the gym, that's a long time. So I'm not saying you need to be in the gym for that long to achieve your dream physique, but the point is, just be in there day after day, consistently over a period of time. Even if you're not doing the most optimal things, I'm telling you right now, just being consistent, you'll get better results than probably 99% of your friends and family who may be following a more optimal approach. So that's the first big lesson I wanted to share with you. Next big lesson is track calories and macronutrients. Now, I'm not saying you have to be tracking this all the time, but I would really suggest having a period of tracking just to build up an awareness of how calorically dense certain foods are. Because one of the great things about tracking calories and protein, carbohydrates, and fats is you build up a great awareness of how calorically dense certain foods are. So once you've done it for a period of time, when you're not quote unquote tracking, you can still basically estimate your food intake going forward. And pretty much that's what I do personally now. I pretty much estimate my food intake because I'm most of the time in a maintenance phase, give or take sometimes a transition, fat loss, muscle building, but mainly in a maintenance phase. I pretty much just estimate my food intake, and that's because of how the period of time when I did track everything, I did weigh all my my food. Now I do basically track my protein and make sure that's all weighed out, but once that's in place, the rest of the calories are estimated essentially, and that allows me to pretty much maintain where I am now. If I was to focus more on fat loss and muscle building, I'd need to start tracking everything a little bit more closely, but just because I've built up an awareness of how calorically dense certain foods are, it's a great skill to have. So that's something I would strongly suggest. Even if you don't do it for life, you do it for a period of time, maybe a month, 2 months, just to get the hang of it, and then you can estimate it going forward, and that'll make a huge difference. Next big lesson, training body parts twice per week. When I first started doing this, made a huge difference, not only to my strength gains, but muscle gains as well. Because remember that volume, sets times reps times load, is the biggest determining factor for influencing muscle growth. And by training body parts twice per week, which allows you to get in more volume. But in addition to that, by training exercises more frequently, that you need to realize that weight training is a skill. So by training certain exercises more frequently, you're basically getting more efficient with those particular exercises. That's going to allow you to get stronger and therefore add more volume, build more muscle over the time. So if you're not already doing that, start doing that immediately. Next big lesson is training my weaker body parts. This made a huge difference to my physique. Probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when I started really targeting my weaker body parts, trying to add more volume, so sets and exercises to specifically shoulders and arms and my biggest weaker areas, a little bit back as well, but mainly shoulders and arms. So by training those body parts more frequently, so train those body parts 3 times, the rest everything twice, that's made a huge difference to my physique. So just balanced my physique out. Those lagging areas have now been brought up, and there's still lagging areas, but they've definitely improved significantly. Now, if you're a female, for example, one point I would make, and most females want to develop their glutes, and therefore train them more frequently. Pretty much all my female clients train their lower body glutes 3 times a week, everything else twice. So that would be my suggestion for if you're a male. Try and focus on areas you really want to develop. Try and train them more frequently. But for females, typically lower body glutes is really an area where a lot of females want to develop. Train them more frequently, and that'll make a huge difference to your physique by training them more frequently, more volume. Next big lesson I want to share is flexible dieting. Flexible dieting, or if it fits your macros, is similar to tracking your food intake. But what flexible dieting means is you're not boxed into a small list of foods. Essentially, you can eat whatever you want as long as you meet your nutrition targets. Now, don't take those comments out of context. What I mean is you can have approximately 80% of your nutrition intake should really come from whole foods, single ingredient whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, good protein, carb, fat sources, good whole food. That should make up the majority of your diet. So you're not just meeting your nutrition targets, you're meeting all your micronutrient needs as well. But 20% can come from whatever you want. Throw in some of your favorite treats in moderation, as long as it's not dominating the diet, as long as you're still meeting those nutrition targets while having mainly whole food, you can still have all your favorite treats and still achieve your goals. So that was a big lesson for me. I think I discovered that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and that was a huge weight off my shoulder, because prior to that I was very much focusing on a small list of foods, whole food, and I'd feel guilty if I had any processed food, and that just created a really bad relationship with food. So by applying a more flexible approach, allows you to have a much better relationship with food while still achieving your goals and still achieving your health goals as well. So hopefully this has been useful. Thank you very much for listening. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton, fitness.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top of the page called free ebook, and you can download that immediately. If you're still yet to subscribe to the podcast, please do, as these episodes come out every single week, and therefore you won't miss an episode by subscribing to the podcast. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you very much.